Wisdom and Grace by Weston Ford. The spring of 1815 brought more than just the usual London season to Miss Eleanor Blackwood's life. Standing before her bedroom mirror, she adjusted the pale blue ribbon in her carefully arranged golden curls, wondering if anyone would notice her tonight at Lady Ashworth's ball. At 20, she was neither a fresh-faced debutante nor a hopeless spinster, but rather caught in that precarious middle ground that made her increasingly anxious about her future. Miss Eleanor, her lady's maid Martha, bustled into the room, eyes wide with excitement. "You'll never believe who's just arrived in London. The Duke of Ravencroft has returned from his estates." Eleanor's heart skipped a beat, though she maintained her composure. "I hardly see why that should interest me, Martha," but her fingers trembled slightly as she smoothed down her silk gown. The Duke of Ravencroft, Sebastian Blackwood, was no relation despite sharing her surname, but their paths had crossed 3 years ago when she was still too young for society. He had been kind to her then, rescuing her from an awkward moment at her first informal gathering when she had nearly tripped on her hem. She had never forgotten the warmth of his smile or the strength of his hands as he steadied her. Now, according to Martha's breathless gossip, he had returned a changed man. The death of his father and the weight of his responsibilities had transformed the carefree gentleman into someone altogether more serious. Eleanor could scarcely imagine the playful Duke as a stern nobleman. The Ashworth ballroom blazed with hundreds of candles when Eleanor entered on her father's arm. She took in the familiar scene, young ladies in their finest silks, ambitious mammas plotting advantageous matches, gentlemen in their immaculate evening wear surveying the selection of potential brides. "My dear Miss Blackwood," Lady Ashworth greeted her warmly, "you must meet my new guests. The Duke of Ravencroft is a distant cousin, you know." Eleanor's pulse quickened as she turned to face him. The years had indeed changed him. His face was leaner, more angular, his shoulders broader beneath his perfectly tailored coat. But his eyes were the same striking shade of gray she remembered, and when they met hers she saw a flicker of recognition. "Miss Blackwood." He bowed over her hand. "I believe we've met before." "Indeed, Your Grace." She dropped into a curtsy, proud that her voice remained steady. "Though I was barely out in society then." "Ah, yes." A smile tugged at his lips. "You were the young lady who handled an awkward moment with remarkable grace. I've often thought of that evening." Heat bloomed in her cheeks. "You are too kind to remember such a trifling incident." "On the contrary." His voice dropped lower, meant for her ears alone. "I found nothing trifling about it." The evening passed in a whirl of dances and conversations. Sebastian, as she couldn't help but think of him in the privacy of her thoughts, claimed her hand for 2 sets, raising eyebrows among the ton. He was everything proper and correct in his behavior, yet there was an undercurrent of something more in his gray eyes that made her heart race. "You've grown into quite the accomplished young woman," he observed during their second dance. "I hear you're quite the scholar." Eleanor tensed slightly. Her love of books and learning was not always considered an attractive quality in a potential bride. "I enjoy reading, Your Grace. Perhaps more than is fashionable. Fashionable interests rarely hold my attention." His hand tightened slightly on hers as they turned through the figures of the dance. "I find myself far more intrigued by genuine passion and intelligence." The weeks that followed brought a succession of social events where their paths continued to cross. Sebastian seemed to appear at every gathering she attended, somehow managing to secure a place near her at dinner parties or claim her hand for at least one dance at every ball. Eleanor tried not to read too much into his attention, yet she couldn't help but notice how his eyes sought her out when he entered a room, or how his smile seemed to soften when their gazes met. She found herself taking extra care with her appearance, choosing colors she knew highlighted her fair complexion and golden hair. It was at Lady Pembroke's garden party that everything changed. Eleanor had retreated to a quiet corner of the garden, seeking a moment's peace from the crush of society. She was surprised to find Sebastian already there, standing beside a flowering cherry tree. "Miss Blackwood." He turned at her approach, and something in his expression made her breath catch. "I had hoped to find a moment alone with you." "Your Grace?" She was proud that her voice remained steady, though her heart was pounding. "Eleanor." The use of her given name sent a shiver down her spine. "I fear I can no longer maintain the pretense of casual acquaintance. These past weeks have shown me that my memory of you was no youthful fancy." He took a step closer, close enough that she could see the flecks of silver in his gray eyes. "You've grown into an extraordinary woman, intelligent, kind, possessed of both grace and wit. I find myself thinking of you at all hours, wondering what you would say about a book one've read or how your eyes would light up at a clever observation." Eleanor's fingers twisted in her skirts. "Your Grace, I—" "Sebastian," he corrected gently. "Please." Sebastian. His name felt like a caress on her tongue. I hardly know what to say. Say that you'll consider me. He reached for her hand, his touch sending sparks through her entire body. Not as a duke, not as an advantageous match, but as a man who finds himself quite hopelessly in love with you. Eleanor's eyes widened. Love? Yes, love. His smile was tender now, vulnerable in a way she had never seen before. I love your quick mind and your gentle heart. I love how you lose yourself in books, and how you always have a kind word for everyone, regardless of their station. I love watching you with children and seeing how your face lights up when you discover something new. Tears welled up in Eleanor's eyes. I never dared hope. Hope what, my dear? That you might see me as more than that awkward girl you once helped. She lifted her chin, gathering her courage. That you might come to care for me as deeply as I have come to care for you. Sebastian's face transformed with joy. Then you return my feelings. With all my heart. He drew her closer, still maintaining propriety but allowing himself to stroke his thumb across her knuckles. I know this is hardly the proper way to go about things. I should speak to your father first, arrange everything formally. But I needed you to know that this isn't about titles or society's expectations. This is about you, Eleanor Blackwood, and how thoroughly you've captured my heart. A soft breeze stirred the cherry blossoms above them, sending pale pink petals drifting down around them like nature's blessing. Sebastian reached up to gently brush one from Eleanor's hair, his touch lingering for just a moment. I will call on your father tomorrow, he said softly. But tonight, may I hope? May I dream of a future with you by my side, sharing my library and my life? Eleanor's smile was radiant. Yes, Sebastian, yes to all of it. The sound of approaching voices reminded them of their surroundings. Sebastian stepped back reluctantly, though his eyes never left her face. We should return to the party before we're missed. Of course. Eleanor smoothed her skirts, trying to compose herself. Though I confess I'll find it hard to focus on polite conversation now. As will I. His eyes twinkled with suppressed joy. But we have a lifetime ahead of us for all the conversations we wish to have. They returned to the party separately, maintaining proper decorum, but their shared secret added a glow to Eleanor's cheeks that had the other young ladies whispering behind their fans. She didn't care. Let them whisper. She had found something rare and precious, a love based on mutual respect and understanding, with a man who valued her mind as much as her beauty. The following day, Sebastian called on Mr. Blackwood as promised. Eleanor waited anxiously in her room until Martha brought the news she longed to hear. Her father had given his blessing to the match. Their courtship was brief but proper, their wedding a celebration of not just their love, but the joining of two kindred spirits. And in the years that followed, visitors to Ravencroft Castle often remarked on the unusual side of the Duke and Duchess, sharing quiet evenings in their vast library, reading together or engaging in spirited discussions about everything from philosophy to poetry. Eleanor had found her fairy tale, not in the glittering ballrooms of London but in the quiet moments with a man who saw her true worth. And Sebastian had found his perfect match in a woman who challenged his mind while capturing his heart. The ton eventually stopped whispering about the scholarly Duchess who preferred books to gossip, especially when they saw how the Duke of Ravencroft looked at his wife with the same adoration years after their wedding as he had on the day they first declared their love beneath the cherry blossoms. For in the end, their story proved what Eleanor had always believed, that true love sees beyond society's expectations to the heart that beats beneath, and that the greatest romance of all is one built on a foundation of mutual respect, shared passions, and genuine understanding.